This part, we're going to talk about some of the games from this generation that maybe didn't deliver for us. There have been, a lot of big franchises launched, a lot of promise, lots of excitement, and things don't always work out.
The other one that disappointed me again, because a lot of the developers over there are friends of mine, so I feel weird saying it, was Rage.
Rage was that game that, the critics we were all about, and I think, when they got bought by Bethesda, everyone was like, oh my god, this is, id meets Bethesda. But even the structure of it, it's like, sure, there were vehicles and stuff like that, but it wasn't, I don't think it was the open world necessarily that some people were imagining.
That's the thing is
well, it was Borderlands. In some ways, Borderlands spoiled it, I think.
Without that sticky multiplayer, then the game your game becomes a campaign rental, unfortunately, this generation, right?
Yeah, no, and I think, for id, that was a big game that could have really defined them on the consoles, much like you guys. This generation, I think, was a generation where Epic really proved
id Software was one of the best and most talented video game developers on the planet when I was growing up. Their list of breakout titles will forever be cemented in gaming's Hall of Fame, I am sure, spearheaded by none other than John Carmack. John Carmack was a legend back in the day. He and his team didn't just revolutionize the first-person shooting industry, they kind of built it. They designed and popularized raycasting, surface caching, and so many more cool, nerdy programming techniques and trends that would help advance the first-person shooting medium. Hell, they even developed one of the first 3D first-person shooting games, Catacomb 3D. Much of their success was garnered in the 12-year period between 1992 and 2004, where they developed a handful of the most iconic shooting games ever made, Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and of course, Quake, not to mention their sequels. They were the #1 PC shooting game developer on the market during this time and leading much of the innovation in PC game technology too. But then, some weird things happened. You didn't hear from id Software for a long time. After the release of Doom 3 in 2004, they kind of just disappeared. For some odd reason, they started to make mobile games. Yes, id Software went completely mobile from 2004 to 2010, that is 6 years. Many people have no idea why this happened. During this time, they started publishing with Electronic Arts, so they took all their existing IPs and made handheld RPG versions of them from Doom, Doom 2, and Quake, as well as a game called Orcs and Elves. It was this very strange time, this very, very weird period of time, if you were simply waiting for the next big id Software game. They finally made their next IP in 2011 with Rage. Rage was one of the most anticipated games of all time, especially since id Software and their styles of games had been falling out of fashion in the years leading up to it. The classic id Software game was basically a style of the past, a maze-like game with health pickups and power-ups littered across box-like levels. You find keycards to open off locked areas to proceed to the next one, that kind of game. The modern military shooter was taking off during this time, the open world as well, and this idea of diversification within gameplay. Gamers wanted story and shooting, not just shooting. They wanted dialogue and characters, a good paced game, and plenty of game systems to mix up the monotony of simple shooting.
It's us or them, and they'll be coming.
So Rage took all these ideas and tried to throw them together in the classic id Software style game template. Unfortunately, it turned out to be one of the biggest disappointments in first-person shooting history. Rage had some bizarre stuff happening behind closed doors. It was initially supposed to be published by EA, the company who had published some of their mobile games that I previously went over. Everything was going good, they even went to QuakeCon and showed some early teaser screenshots of the game EA. But for whatever reason, ZeniMax Media, who owns Bethesda, picked up publishing rights to Rage, probably for reasons of money, I'm not sure. But sources say that the change of management had no impact on the development of Rage, however, the game was delayed an additional year during this time. Yeah, I was there for the launch of Rage, and it was not pretty. Carmack had been working on some new type of technology for the game that would change the way FPS game rendering and texturing would work. I watched a lot of their preview videos on it, and I was excited because it was looking amazing, but Rage was broken at launch for many PC players. I had to get my copy refunded because it literally would not work. Good old Rage maintained a healthy frame rate of 2 at times for me, and crashing to the desktop at others. This continued for an entire month, and many PC gamers were, no pun intended, filled with rage. Whatever Carmack did to the engine just did not work out in terms of optimization across multiple system specs. The game was a complete mess. It looked amazing at first glance, but when you got up close to it, the textures were quite hideous and unstable, really unstable. I was surprised because leading up to Rage, I was a huge id Software fan, and they were always ahead of the curb in terms of technology for new PC games. Rage's gunplay did feel great, I'll give him that, but that's pretty much all you could say about the positives for the game. The rest was this weird hodgepodge of ideas that never came together. Rage's world was supposed to have a lot of exploration, given the fact that you had a vehicle, but it was small, really small, almost like the game world was a series of funnels and tunnels that connected the otherwise very linear game. Yes, Rage was a very linear game, make no doubt about it. The characters were banal, uninteresting, and had zero developments, as well as the character you played. It was a weird game that was trying to kind of be an id Software game, but deep down trying really hard to incorporate all these modern ideas. Though the pseudo half-baked open world, the lifeless characters, and the general flow of the game was just masquerading as a game bigger than it actually was. Oh, and the game was painfully short too, and the story, an absolute joke. People were furious about the ending, and if you played it, you know what I mean. When the screen went black and the end credits started rolling out, it was pretty much a fiesta. And don't forget about the worst implementation of multiplayer in an id Software game ever. Rage 2 makes literally no sense. The original game is something that people don't remember, most people don't care about, and most people are not crying out for a sequel. Rage was passable at best, and a disappointment at worst. With so many other great IPs to work on and so many other ideas for making new ones, it doesn't make much sense to give us a sequel to a game that no one really cares about. I don't want to undermine the work of id Software, I'm simply saying that the game that they made wasn't memorable or up to the standards of their prior work. I'm not degrading the company or attacking anyone, I'm simply saying what many people are thinking. If you enjoyed the original Rage, that's great, but you're probably the minority. If Rage 2 succeeds, that's great, but they're gonna have to do a lot better than the half-ass effort that they put into the original game. Rage 2 needs an identity, but Rage had an identity crisis. Up until they put out Doom in 2013, which was incredible by the way, id Software had not made a proper AAA title since Doom 3, which was 12 years before that day. I don't know what happened to my favorite developer during this time or what propelled them to magically turn it all around with a Doom remake. This one game proves that id Software does have the talent to make some of the best games on the market. I just don't know why that they're diving into a franchise that no one remembers. Rage 2's success is going to be attributed to how well it can stand on its own 2 feet without kneeling to the trends of modern day gaming like its first game tried to do. If you're going to do vehicle combat and don't make it an afterthought. If you're going to do a story, make it count, make it big, make it engaging, and don't throw a cliffhanger at us during the final hour. If you're going to go to the trouble of making detailed NPCs that we can engage with, make them interesting and have more than just a few lines of dialogue to say. Make us care about them and what's going on. Create urgency to the story, not just the combat. Don't half-ass the multiplayer component of the game again, and do not butcher the PC port, which is something you're supposed to be the best at. All of those things were missing pieces from Rage, and I don't want to see them missing from Rage 2. id Software can absolutely make Rage 2 great, but the question is, would the industry rather have something new instead of it? Especially since the first game kind of bombed. But I guess the real question is, would you rather have a brand new IP from id Software or a sequel to a game that you probably didn't like too much? Think about that. So there it is, my initial thoughts on Rage 2, a game that before being reminded of had completely escaped my memory. Thanks for watching guys, I really appreciate it. Let me know what your thoughts are of Rage 2 down below in the comments section, and if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like it, and subscribe here for more of our future content. You guys have a kick-ass day. We'll see you guys in our next video. Peace, love, and happiness. Until then.